Joel Fury, Director of Campus Planning, Design, and Construction. As part of the ongoing Campus Framework community engagement efforts, we seek your input for the furnishings to complete the newly named Einhorn Family Walk. In May, we provided 2 designs, and we sought student feedback at that time. People who participated in the survey were pretty equally torn between those 2 options. Since that time, we installed the temporary teak benches along the pedestrian walk. These were purchased to replace older benches across campus, and they'll be would be relocated across campus with a replacement with the final bench. So today we have 4 different options to present people. And following the presentation over the next few weeks, we'll be conducting a survey for student feedback. The installation would of the selected bench would take place as early as next semester. So we have Susanna Ross here from Sasaki to present those 4 options. And the premise for these options is not just to look at the bench, but to look at how those terraces will be outfitted for a fully furnished and usable space. We use this as an opportunity to address some feedback in terms of increasing some color in the space, making the spaces a little more of a dynamic for people to gather, to converse, and also as using some of the any furnishings or changes to the terrace to make them more accessible. So with that, I'll turn the presentation piece over to Susanna Ross, and she will walk through the 4 different options.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. We're thrilled to have this opportunity to kind of re-engage with students and find a really good solution for the Einhorn Family Walk, the furnishings that will be there. In a way, this is better because, back in the spring, it was all just kind of an idea, and I think now people can really see what it's like to be in that space, to want to hang out in that space, and maybe you can better speak to, students can weigh in on better what they would like to see there. And so you can see what's there today. As Joe mentioned, these teak benches are slated for other locations all over campus, but were put here until we could actually further engage with students and come up with a solution that made them sort of happiest. I think, what you might notice about these is they're very sort of formal, they're lined up, and really when we designed this space, what we were going for was something more, a little bit more casual, a little more engaging and dynamic for people to kind of be together, be with each other, work, converse, meet as groups. And so our feeling is that we could design something for these terraces, these sort of level areas, we refer to them as terraces for now, that we could design something ourselves that might be sort of more in keeping with the way we think students will want to use the space. So we've come up with a number of options. All of them you'll see incorporate wood. I think what we showed back in the spring was actually a beautiful material, ultra high performance concrete, which if you ever get to see it is really not like your typical concrete. On the other hand, we did get a lot of feedback that it would be cold and not comfortable to sit on, and we took that to heart. So everything you see today will have wood incorporated. And for each option, you'll see we're showing a sort of a big idea for what we'll call the bench, although they're not sort of your traditional bench, I guess I would say. And then along the bottom, you're going to see sort of different options that we're looking at for other kinds of furnishings that these terraces could offer. And for every case, actually, we're looking at detectable warning papers to line sort of the edge of these terraces to address concerns that people have about falling off. As designers, we tend to go by code and what code requires, and I think sometimes we learn once a space is being used that actually you want to go a little above and beyond code, and so we think these detectable warning bricks are going to be a great way to address that. And you'll see we also use the planters to help better define that edge so that you have both a tactile sense and a kind of a visual sense of where that edge is. And then furnishings, you'll see these are the idea would be to place these furnishings in a way that they're actually mounted to the ground so they don't go walking off and getting sort of tossed around. But they do give a possibility for more sort of casual conversational groupings. And you'll see colors, you'll see different furnishings and different options. The fact is what we really need feedback on right now are the benches and certainly the furnishings and the colors as well. but everything can be sort of mixed and matched. So we've come up with 4 schemes, but they are by no means all sort of directly tied to each other exclusively. So our first option, which I was sort of just looking over with you, is the lounge. This may look familiar, and that's intentional. We really loved the idea of the pillows that we came up with in the spring, but wanted to rethink of it as a different material, wood. So we're talking about a steel structure clad with wood, but still maintaining that sort of pillowy shape, with spots for people to sit low, sit high, sit with a back, sit without a back, sit facing different directions. You can see up in the upper left-hand corner here, we have a little plan view of the terrace. So here's that edge of the terrace, and the benches fall along the back. We keep a nice wide space, 6 feet clear in between them to create sort of an accessible kind of nook for someone who is not going to sit on the bench. We're also creating wide open, sort of level, backless parts of these benches for sort of transferring from wheelchairs onto the benches. You can see here the bubble showing these detectable warning pavers at the edge. And then here we're installing these rectangular linear planters that both add color, define the edge, and also really kind of recall the bands of paving. We wanted something that the planters that are out there now are beautiful. They've got some great color in them, but we think that this shape is actually sort of nice and in keeping with the rest of the promenade. And then in spots we're showing, you can see up here, is sort of a more conversational setting for furnishings with these lounge chairs and a little kind of coffee table that would be mounted. And here we show blue and orange and gray, but the colors are kind of whatever we want them to be and in any combination. But I think, as Joe said, there was some feedback that as much as people seem to be enjoying the promenade, it felt too neutral and too kind of not bright enough, not enough color.
Suzanne?
Yes.
You're showing this on this one terrace, but is the thought that these would be the options for all 6 of them?
Correct. Yeah, that's a really good point. We were asked to sort of set up the IKEA room in 4 different ways, but the idea is that it would be replicated throughout, and different sort of lengths, and it'll take a little bit of design to figure out how each terrace gets laid out. They're not all the exact same size, but this is just the idea. And I should add, just there have been some questions about why we created these terraces. I think everyone knows Syracuse is incredibly hilly, and what we realized in designing the promenade is that we didn't have a space that was going to be comfortable for people to hang out in. It was actually on a very pronounced slope, and by creating these terraces with accessible access here on this end of them, we created a level surface that accommodates kind of a level seating position, which is comfortable, which is nice for wheelchairs, so they're not sort of moving around. And at the same time, we felt like we're carving out little spaces, little rooms almost, for people to really do what we want them to do, to hang out, to study, to meet with other students. So we think the terraces actually, it was solving a grading problem, but we were really happy with what we created.
Susanna, how would the furniture be mounted to the terrace, the non-bench furniture?
They have little sort of loops in the feet, and you would sort of drill into the paving and into the slab below. I think the university's talked about maybe removing it in the wintertime and reinstalling in the spring. That's what I
also give us the flexibility to change things out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I guess I should add, there was some talk about, why don't we add color to the benches themselves? And I think our philosophy is that color, everyone wants it, but tastes and color can be changeable. The colors themselves can fade over time, and that our preference would be really to use color in temporary items where, or changeable items, I should say, so that the planters themselves that are movable and changeable, the individual furnishings which are movable and changeable, banners, but the benches themselves, we wanted, like the rest of the promenade, the kind of fixed permanent elements to be somewhat neutral.
The actual plants being planted as well, in terms of bringing color?
Yes. So again, this option probably looks familiar to those of you who saw our options A and B, or however we call them. Shifting seat wall, I think, is what we called this back in the spring. And again, we're looking at precast benches of different lengths, and sort of low seat level, 18-inch high, as well as a sort of higher working level bench, table. We know people are going to be eating and working and studying on the promenade, and so, the walk. So we wanted to accommodate that, but we have introduced wood caps to each of these elements to really make that a more comfortable, inviting surface. We've also added some, we've kept the kind of flexibility of a backless version, but added one that has a back that flips up. And, that's something that we can do more or less of, depending on what people want to see. Again, we're going to show the detectable warning pavers. And here, rather than a linear planter, we're looking at a square one that we would repeat a little more often. So just a slightly different look, but really intended to accomplish the same goal of providing a visual cue to that edge. And so you see here, we've got the sort of desk height table, which shifts down to a seat that could, someone can sit sideways, sit back. The idea is really that we're creating spaces between benches, as you see up in the plan here, so people can be not just sitting straight forward looking out, which is great. It's a beautiful view to the old row, but we want people to be able to face each other and really kind of sit in different ways. At the table height piece, we have a series of fixed stools, as well as an open space that allows a wheelchair to pull right in. And I should add, what I think I forgot to mention in both these first two options were these custom furnishings would incorporate outlets, USB and power, so that students can really kind of plug in, hang out, and work. I think that was something we heard a lot of in the spring, so we're anxious to accommodate that. So this is high-low, option 2. Option 3, so the first two designs we showed you were custom designs, which could be really, we think, fabulous for the university. We also realize that there are off-the-shelf products out there that can accomplish some of the same goals. So what we're seeing here is actually a bench that's offered, the wood lining part of it is offered in sort of a backless and backed armed version. And we're proposing that we would mount it to granite blocks, which would match the kind of wall that is the face of the terraces. So sort of different materials. The previous example, we were looking at precast block. Here we're looking at granite. Again, things are changeable if people have really strong preferences one way or the other. Again, we're looking at detectable warnings, the linear planters, and then here our fixed furniture is a little more in keeping with the bench style, and it's a backless version that can be a seat, can be a table, however folks choose to use it. And here's that example. And so again, we've got flowers in the planters that give you color. We've got those fixed little stools that can give colors. The blue and orange we think make a lot of sense. Obviously the orange does. But I think, we're open. I think we wanted to find something that was really not like the rest of the promenade. So no yellows, no browns, obviously. But again, we're creating spaces. So whereas the benches right now just line the back, here we're showing a bench and then another bench that can be facing it or looking out. The fixed furnishings are in little groupings to create opportunities. We're trying to create conversational spaces, but in select spaces also leave things a little bit open so that when student groups want to put a table in or something like that, it's doable. So it's a careful balance between flexibility and creating a number of desirable seating opportunities.
Is the wood solid or slotted?
It is slotted. These are slats of wood. And the wood species, we can sort of decide on that. I think our main goal is that it be durable and not have to be constantly refinished and maintained. So Ipe is a really good one for that purpose, but we're very open to discussions about what's durable and sustainable, and also within budget. And then finally, we can't ignore the fact that there is the possibility you could just keep those teak benches there, and I suppose the university could order new ones to go in all the places where these are slated to go. But we're showing that as an option, number 4. And here, again, we have detectable warnings and planners, and we picked a slightly more kind of upright chair and table that we felt like sort of resonated with what these teak benches look like. And so here's that option. So basically, benches as they are now, but then you layer in the detectable warnings, the planters, and then these little groupings of tables and chairs to give that kind of extra way of being in the space and being with other people in the space. And so these are the 4 choices. There'll be a survey circulated that actually allows people to vote on these and to give comments on any of the other things that you've seen in the presentation. We're really anxious to see what people have to say and make the promenade, the walk, I got to get used to that, a place that students want to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you get a clap at the end of the last one? Must have done really, really well.
Yes.
When people study this, and I apologize if you said this before I came in, when people study this, do they find that seats that have backs are more likely to be inhabited? Do people gravitate where there is not just so I'm a geologist, stone is the most wonderful thing in the world. But when they have an option, do they seat preferentially where there's a back?
That's a good question. Intuitively, I suspect yes, maybe that's true. I think the reason to include them without backs is so that, there's options for lying down, for lying across, for sort of facing one direction or the other. It gives a little more flexibility. But I would guess, just thinking about myself and where I want to sit, a back is nice.
We have received a little bit of feedback about the ability to transfer from wheelchair to seating surface, that having a open area can be helpful.
Yes,
but also potentially a vertical surface to grab. So I think the options are trying to address both of those.
Great. Thank you.
The detectable warning pavers, is the plan to put those on the back as well? Because some of the back edges, particularly on that plinth, that terrace, are pretty bad. Like obviously the benches take some of it, but the gaps in between there.
We can definitely look at that. So you're talking about
On both edges.
the other edge.
Yeah,
I think for the most part, those were intended to be planted surfaces that kind of rose to meet that. I think in one case it didn't get built quite exactly as we design it, but for sure we want to make sure that while we're installing these, we're addressing any issues.
That is a very relatively quick and easy thing to replace for those brick pavers. And those would be the standards you see, like they're at the edges.
Yeah.
At the ends.
Will any of these issues address current things students are worried about, such as traction and slipperiness on some of the pavers, as well as some level issues between the concrete and pavers? There's little bumps.
Well, I'd love to hear what the issues are with the bumps. I don't know if you know more about that, Joe, than I do.
No, I haven't. Actually, that's good. We
It
should
mainly comes in when there's a storm, there's rain, there's also drainage issues, where it's being described as a river almost, where University Place used to be.
Yeah, it's something we should talk about.
Definitely, and that's something we'll
Because we did,
want to address.
the drainage system is all new, and in addition to what was existing there, so I'd like to know more about it.
And in terms of, just traction, I think that pavers themselves give better traction just by the nature of the jointing that they have. But then concrete is also preferred just from a comfort level. So the goal was to have a balance of two, like have a completely poured in place surface that ran all the way through, but then kind of recall the other sidewalks and crosswalks on campus with the brick paving in the bulk of the walk.
And that's how the sort of layout paver to concrete walk to plinth. The intention was you'd have a clear, smooth concrete surface for wheelchair access along the length. It's a little bit more comfortable to go over than all the joints of brick pavement.
So I have a disconnect in how you subscribe the project in the past, is that it seems as though all of the planning has all the seating focused facing the old row. And what you promoted to date is the fact that the old row is no longer just the focus that has moved, but all of the seating focus, instead of being in the middle of the terrace and having options, especially in this location where you can look down the entrance to campus, all the seating seems to focus back toward the promenade or the walkway itself. That just seems to be a disconnect from what we promoted as expanding the edge of the campus.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Joe, you can tackle this too if you want. The concept was, in fact, to really kind of take in the old row and, in a sense, actually make more out of everything between the old row and the new row by really giving that space an edge that allowed you to enjoy it. I think, and views to the old row are part of it, but really, really even more important than that is solar exposure and putting the seating where people actually can get the sun on their faces and feel warm
Feel the warmth.
in what is kind of can be a very harsh climate. And then, you know, to have breaks in these terraces and in these seatings that really facilitate access and views to the existing buildings so that we're not sort of walling off from them.
A lot of feedback came to being able to use these areas to gather and talk and be able to sit and face someone else in a conversation. And you can see here that this bench between the two trees kind of speaks to that, but it also, you know, you could still be looking up at the old row. And then also part of the consideration was to be also well accomplishing that, be able to effectively remove snow as well to keep these.
I was going to guess if I want to sit in front of the Shine and wait for somebody to exit, I have my back to the building. The same thing with the other buildings. It's not a waiting place for me to wait for somebody who's exited either. A lot of the designs have my back to the buildings, to this row of buildings.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I think another point to make is that some of the most well-used buildings like Bird and Shine have kind of longer-term visions that we, for their sort of front area, that we didn't address with this design, but we specifically didn't. You'll notice we don't have terraces in front of Shine, in front of Bird, because we think that there are maybe long-term potentials to have those areas be a little bit more sort of inviting for people to spill out of the building.
Linking the walk into these larger plazas that are part of these, you know, a Bird addition out off the second floor plaza itself, or a Shine renovation that has a different front door arrangement. I think each of these schemes, the first three, does offer some opportunity to face the opposite direction towards the building.
Susanna, on option one, can you sit on that backside? Is that more like something, the back is singular in the middle and they're seating all the way around it?
It is not. It was definitely, it's set up in a somewhat sided way, so that the backrest that you see does sort of come down, and it's co-planar with the backside of the bench. But,
Yeah.
you know, it's something, if those grew in width, which is a problem for snow removal and everything else, you know, you could conceivably create space all around for sure.
I would say having that model, you know, we had that in the Shine, and we had it in our office. You know, that top of that second level is probably, I don't know how far, you know, it's not very high in and of itself. It's almost like bar stool height. So I could see
You can sit
just
on
as
it,
many
yeah.
people sitting on the upper level as on the lower level. Or people sitting on the upper level with their feet on the lower level, or any variant of.
It seems some of these, obviously we know we have snow 8 months out of the year. So it seems as though an advantage of the teak bench is after it snows, essentially the snow falls through those openings or those slats. I can imagine the numbers of almost all the other three, the snow is going to, and the ice is going to build up. Unless you guys are shoveling these off, that you're going to have significant snow and ice buildup on those things. And how long is that going to take to dissipate once the weather actually starts to turn?
The intention is to clear them, you know, periodically to get the snow off. But I think the teak, like you said, in addition to the slatting, being able to get the snow off and the moisture away, but the teak will definitely, any wood product, I should say, will definitely warm up more quickly in direct
I
sunlight.
mean, the size of the slatting allows that,
Yeah.
dissipates water faster.
Are any of these options heated?
They are not.
No.
It'd be fun.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we did look at it. It was just, it's kind of cost prohibitive.
So I was at your very first presentation. I was on the campus framework committee years ago, right? And one of the things you all said when you visited for the first time was, it's freaky, you have this beautiful lawn and nobody on it, right? And so I'm building on Chuck's point, part of what you've done is, it's easy to see how you would bring places for people to be. But I know you've also worked in other places, and I wonder, as you look at places like Montreal and Toronto and others, could you just in a more general way talk about what is necessary culturally to get people into spaces like this? And maybe it's like the children's book, if you give a mouse a cookie or you give a moose a muffin, if you know any of those. Maybe what you're talking about is, we know we're going to do a road here, but then there'll be a road there and so forth. So can you just talk about bringing us out of our places into the agora a little bit? What will that take?
Well, I would like to comment on the fact that, I did not go to school at Syracuse, so I'm a little less familiar with the campus than a lot of folks on our team actually who went to ESF. And they were shocked. For the longest time, we've had this webcam where we could look at the promenade and see how people were using it, and also pictures from the campus, in the newspaper. And I think everyone's been shocked to see how many people are sitting on the lawn now, that it's not a road, that it, I think sitting between like a big row of old buildings and a road doesn't feel quite as comfortable as sitting on a lawn between this beautiful architecture and like what is really a student kind of edge, a people edge, a pedestrian edge. So that's been, I think, a kind of a byproduct that we've been really thrilled to see. I think other options, have to do with sort of putting furnishings and things out in the space that help people feel like it's meant to be inhabited and not just sort of passed through, maybe a little less formal. I think movable furnishings bring along the issues of, we discussed sort of them being walked off with or trashed in a way. But I think what the university, this was a really big move to actually close this off to traffic, and I think, pretty soon, hopefully, no one's going to remember that it ever was a road, but that really the impact has been to the entire space between the old and the new road, not just the road.
So do you think these kinds of steps, are they enough? Or do we have to have things like some of these Canadian cities are doing where culturally there have to be other things like art installations or water structures? Is this enough to get people into gathering spaces?
I think you're exactly right. There's a sort of balance between the physical design of the space and the kind of programming that happens within it, whether it's, food trucks or art. I think, some things that are appropriate in a city may be a little bit different in a campus that's trying to kind of maintain a certain kind of environment or look. On the other hand, I think what we've designed is a space where that sort of thing absolutely could happen. Sort of temporary art installations can come in on the different terraces.
And these spaces do also need to be multifunctional because they are used for a broad range of functions. It was awesome to see the first week of classes. I was going to a meeting and saw the first Newhouse class being held unofficially on one of these plazas, and there was students out with their cameras and tripods, and the professor was giving them the first class on how to set up for an interview or whatever. And so they need to function for that. They need to function for when a sorority wants to come out and raise money for charity. They need to function for athletic events. So there's definitely a balance in terms of what we put out there that supports all those functions and doesn't prohibit any of them.
So why do they all be the same? Why can't each terrace have its own unique character and have maybe different furnishings or different plannings?
It's a good question. I would only say that for aesthetic uniformity across the space, but I do see the future renovations that shine that impact the walk that attach to it, and the future renovations of Bird that attach to the walk. They may have their own character in linking the walk to the building.
We're also out trying to sell these.
Exactly.
Right now, I'm trying to sell generic spaces they don't really look, they're a little bigger, but there's nothing unique to one space versus the other. Trees are the same, the planters are going to be the same, the benches are going to be the same. In some ways, it almost I understand uniformity, but it also starts to sound very sterile. Whereby if we had, you know, a table option in one and a seating option in another, is that a bad thing?
No, not necessarily, and our discussion's all more specifically talking to how the walking engages with shine is we've talked a lot about movable furniture, and then maybe dining is, you know, seasonally spills that out to the plaza to have movable furnishing for dining options. It's a great point, something we should talk about.
My other suggestion is we need to incorporate some kind of trash collection.
Yes, we do
So
have.
Mr. Salahead, you pick up a piece of trash in front of the Goldstein Alumni Center. The first place I could deposit it was in front of Newhouse.
We're on that.
Good job. But does that get incorporated into these, or are those separate?
It's separate, it's already on its way. Those facilities are already on. They're the same, they're the campus standard,
Landscape forms.
landscape
Brown,
forms.
brown.
They're gray.
Gray.
They're gray, dark gray.
Okay, who thinks they're brown?
But does that make your point, does that make option 2 more appealing in that you have
It gives more
variety
options.
within the family, and you could take a family and, you know, make each terrace a little more specific from the same kit of parts?
And I guess the reason I was thinking about them being different is, I think the ones that are closer between Shine and Newhouse, I would do differently, so the seating would be on both sides, because people walk up that grass space between them, whereby you're not walking up the grass space at the Shine, you know, either that same entry from the other side isn't apparent at the Goldstein Alumni Hockey Center.
So Chuck, I would imagine that if this feedback is for, you know, having a seating option, a table option, options 1 and 3 could be reimagined to include a table or seating option.
Yep.
I also wonder too, you know, to Chuck's point, and I know we have the teak benches out there, so that's a good thing, that there's existing seating. Do you consider, here are some options we're considering, and like you're going the other direction, and Chuck is marketing, which one of these options do you like? Family A, oh, I like option 2. Okay, well, Terrace 3 becomes option 2, and they name it that way. And maybe that's more attractive to be able to decide one of these is what they want.
Well, you know, we need to, the intention here is to make sure we're soliciting as much of the student feedback as possible, so we have to balance what the students are asking for.
So about, for Suzanne, have you ever considered, like option 1, having seating all the way around and putting in between the local streets, so it's in the center of the terraces as opposed to the edge?
Yeah, I mean, you'll see in some of the options, we're introducing, benches that are between the trees. In option 1, we didn't, I think in part because the dimension is so generous.
Because they're wider.
They're much wider. So, but it isn't to say that we couldn't. We were trying to sort of, you know, make every option a little different. So, but no, for sure, you could think of an option where you have something that's like those pillow benches, but kind of moves out in between the trees.
So in discussing that, I know one of the things that we've put out there, and obviously seating options and where you put them is a big part of it. And I'm not saying this to deter any options. One of the things that we have planned out already is those are locations for students to table.
Yeah.
So if you put seating there, good, okay. Then we need to think about
Yep.
where we're going to allow students to table, because literally that is based on the
That's
edges
exactly.
and the spacing in between the trees is the only place to do that.
Exactly, and that's why we haven't, in any of these schemes, filled up all of the space on any
Yeah.
one plinth terrace. Here, like, we're leaving this space open. So I think once we take this study beyond, like, one example and look across, make sure that there are enough of those spaces, given the demand for them. whatever it might
And you
be.
do also get a little bit of real estate at the flush end as well to work with.
Yep, no, we've got, and we have,
Yeah. So that's our intention, to maintain flexibility while also
Yeah.
having conversational spaces.
Yeah.
I hope you don't think this is bizarre, but we had a this week with our first Indigenous Peoples Day, which was a proposal from the students and enacted for the first time at Syracuse University this year. And the announcement went out and it just said, along the promenade. Right, I realize that's ancestral language now, but that's what it actually said. And it turned out that's not that easy. It's a pretty big place.
Quarter mile.
Right?
Quarter mile, yeah.
So one thing I like about the notion of some customized subparts is you could say, well, people will be meeting at the blank.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
The Newton Terrace.
Yes. I say, yeah, once we have donors, they'll have their own names. But that could be also the character issue, and they could be different from each other in that
It's
sense.
just almost, I hadn't anticipated this as a member of
Yeah.
the framework committee, but wayfinding within the space is important. isn't
Yeah.
it?
I just want to second that. I do like Chuck's and their idea about different kind of seatings at each one, because I think it adds like a cultural diversity on it too, where you have different kind of seating, and it does eliminate that stereotype, like you said, where every single one's the same. And I think that for campuses, we're trying to say, oh, we look abroad across everything. It'd be neat to see some, if you will, diversity in the seating
Yeah.
around.
And it speaks to the campus architecture, which is definitely a plus.
Yeah.
I did have one question on the T benches too, or well, two, I guess. Are those are able to be continuously removed or put in? I know it's a lot of work, but they're able to move. The rest are, my assumption, as soon as they're in, they look heavy and they're never going to be able to be moved, correct?
You could certainly replace the wood on either option 2 or 3. And option 1, I think the way we would design it, it's an idea right now, but I think the idea would be that each slat of wood that's sort of wrapped around the steel structure could also, again, sort of like come in and out. And what the university would probably order extra pieces at the time that we install these, so that those can be, the structure underlying would probably stay, but the surfaces that get damaged can get replaced.
Okay. And then with the T benches, I know you had talked about the possibility for students when they're coming in, they're looking in for power or USB ports. I understand from this 3 standard with the fabricated bases or the granite bases, you can build that in. How would you do that on the T bench option?
We have a bollard option, a lighted bollard option
Okay.
that we could use as power. It closely mirrors the type of light poles in look and finish, so it would match in with the existing light fixtures.
Could the option for variety be included in the survey as it gets sent out?
Yeah.
Sure, Megan's got some service in there.
Can I ask something? I want to throw a wrench in this, but I figured this is an opportunity. We've talked about being sustainable on the campus. And is there any way to incorporate some kind of sustainability piece in this? For example, you're going to tear down the Hoople building, and you're going to remove wood and beams, et cetera. Is there any way to think about incorporating that into this to perpetuate the message we talked about sustainability?
Well, there's definitely a wide range of sustainably sourced materials, which would probably be a first place to look.
There are. I mean, I think an idea like that is lovely. It ends up being, I think, a bit of a cost issue.
It's a cost
You
benefit there,
know,
but
Brooklyn Bridge
I
Park,
think
you may
it's hard for
know.
us to talk about being sustainable
Right.
and then
Right.
tear down a building and throw everything away and then buy all new materials.
Well, the concrete brick, that is recycled, so we'll be able to speak to that in terms of Hoople. In terms of, it's mostly a concrete box,
Yeah.
so that is recycled, which is a good thing. But we can look at some other options. I definitely think when we would, presuming if a wood, an option with wood, they all incorporate wood, we would need to look at sustainable sourcing. And there's several different standards to that. But the most important thing is that the wood is to be sustainably sourced and also be able to meet the climate. We also talked a little bit about synthetic materials, but they're not that appealing. They tend to fade. They might be damaged more easily than a wood. Well, we'll have this up on the website, and we'll be in touch with the campus community over the next several weeks. We appreciate everyone coming out.
Thank you.